Hello everybody, welcome to Also Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and drop a like on this video. I am trying to hit 100k subscribers on this channel by the end of the year, so your subscription would be much appreciated. That goal is probably unrealistic on this channel, but fuck it, I'm trying for it anyway. Today's video, I'm going to be reacting to something some NBA media people have been saying. The other day, I believe it was the Kyle Lowry trade, that there was some article that came out that had that as the #1 move of the offseason, and the Bulls signing DeRozan as the worst move of the offseason. And overall, the discourse around the Bulls DeRozan move has been interesting. I think Kenny made a video about the controversy of the Bulls offseason. I know Funky did. And I think all of this is quite ridiculous. I just haven't really had a chance to weigh in my opinion here. I'm not going to focus on the article I mentioned earlier. That's just kind of what got me to want to make this video. Rather, I'm going to focus on a clip that came out a couple of days ago that was from some sports talk show that has Nick Friedel on it. I'm hoping I'm saying that last name right. Who is a figure who is not well liked among Bulls fans. But it wasn't so much him that annoyed me in this clip that I'm going to show you, but I'll just show you his section first. So here it is.
They went completely all in on a team that at its highest ceiling maybe gets to the second round of the postseason. So I'm still surprised. I know Karnisovas and Eversley are trying to do their own thing in that front office, and I know fans are excited. But when I look at that team in comparison to the rest of the East, I just don't think they improve that much where you can start looking at them going, oh, okay, I see them having a legitimate chance to get up to the top of the Eastern Conference.
So, among the points that Nick made, there weren't actually that many. It was pretty baseline. He said that the highest ceiling is a second round of the postseason, which I can't disagree with, really. I mean, it's plausible because, like, matchups and a team folding and stuff like that. Like, I would have said the second round was the ceiling of the Atlanta Hawks last season, and then they made the conference finals, obviously, but overall I'm still going to lean with that was more a matter of the Sixers folding than it was the Hawks outperforming their ability, even if the Hawks did play fantastic. So that's plausible, but I would guess no better than a second round for the Chicago Bulls. I agree with that. The Bulls didn't improve that much to be a legit top of the conference team. Now, the start of that sentence, they didn't improve that much. Strongly disagree. To a top of the conference team, I mean, I guess that would depend on your definition of the top of the conference. I could see the Bulls being among the best of the not actually a contender teams, which in the East right now is basically the Bucks, the Nets, and a little bit the Miami Heat. After that, I think every other team is like just a really good team, or well, the teams right below are really good but not a real contender. The Atlanta Hawks would probably be the best of those teams, and then like the Celtics or something. And I think the Bulls can be in a tier similar to those guys, but top of the conference, like actually contender, of course not. I don't think anyone with any reason is saying that. But even though Nick Friedel is well disliked, and when this came out, a lot of the Bulls fans that I follow were giving him shit, I wasn't so annoyed with what he said. I feel like he was fairly reasonable. He used to work for the Bulls, or in Bulls media at least, and he was like one of the biggest talking heads, and he was pretty much always negative, which the thing is, for the most part, being negative about the Bulls the last few years has been correct, so I didn't get to the point of hating him for it because, like, he was usually right to some extent over time. Not always, because I remember him being a guy who was pretty low on Zach LaVine, if I remember correctly, and obviously that has not been accurate. But in general, being negative about the Bulls the last couple of years was completely fair, so I don't hate the guy. This other guy whose name I didn't even bother to figure out because he kind of creeped me out because his eyes are dead. I'm just going to play the clip because he said a lot of fucking outrageous things.
Look, my guy Nick has covered the Bulls for a long time, and he nailed it on the head. The Bulls have gone all in on two sub-all-star 30-year-old guys in Nick Vucevic and DeMar DeRozan to try to keep a guy in Zach LaVine who has never been on a winning team and now is going to be a free agent in a year and could leave. And I think there's a real chance the Bulls don't even make the play-in tournament. You know, when you talk about this depth in the Eastern Conference, I think they could finish 11th or 12th very easily. They're going to have a terrible defense. And you look at the way this team is built, like, yes, those guys are durable, but I do not see them having any kind of high ceiling. And now they can't trade a draft pick until, what, 2030? 2040? I mean, they've just put themselves in a box for what? For no high ceiling at all. Like Nick said, it's baffling after all the painstaking rebuild they went to not keep Jimmy Butler, who is, by the way, better than all of these guys they have. It's just really strange what the Bulls have set themselves up with here.
Okay, so I just have bullet points of everything I said here because I'm not just going to replay the clip over and over again. But he said that they were going all in on sub-all-star 30-year-olds. So first things first, they're barely in their 30s, Vucevic and DeRozan. They're just getting into it. Sub-all-star, I mean, DeRozan hasn't been an all-star in a few years, but that's more so been the matter of the situation he's been in, not his actual talent. I'd say DeMar's pretty much just as good as he was the last few years in Toronto when he was an all-star. It's just not been the same circumstance. Not one of the top teams in the conference, and in a conference that has a lot of guard depth, so he hasn't really had any fucking opportunity. So I don't think that's a knock on DeMar DeRozan, really. Nikola Vucevic has been an all-star for 2 of the last 3 years, so sub-all-star implies that, like, they barely make it. I mean, Vucevic is definitely not among the best of the all-star team or anything like that, but also I think that just comes from the fact that he's not very flashy that people say that, because, like, 20 and 12, along with 4 assists on good efficiency over the last 4 seasons, or last 3 seasons, that's definitely a commendable amount of numbers. He's a very good post scorer. He can shoot the 3 ball. He's a really good passer for a big man. He's a good rebounder and a passable defensive player. So, regardless, another thing about going all in on them, like, is did they really go all in on them? Because what they did was they traded the number 8 pick, which I believe became, is it Franz Wagner or Franz Wagner? I'm not sure which one it is. Whichever one it is. From what I understand, he's not some crazy prospect. They traded Wendell Carter Jr., who is not that great, even though I thought he could be really good eventually. I kind of just gave up on that. I kind of had this thing with Bulls players where I hold on to hope and I refuse to admit that I'm questioning things, and then one day I just snap. Had that happen with Markkanen, had that happen with Wendell. I just eventually couldn't keep lying to myself. And Wendell was the case like that. So that's what they gave up for Nikola Vucevic. They also traded a future first-round pick, so, I get it. They did give quite a bit for him, but in the case of DeRozan, they traded Thaddeus Young, who's also 30, and good, but not as good as DeMar DeRozan, and a 2025 first-round pick that is top 10 protected. So, assuming that the Bulls, do dip off in, 2025 or whatever, that pick is going to go to them. If they're a bad team in 2025, the odds of them not getting a top 10 pick are really fucking low. So the fact that that pick has that protection, that's really not going all in. It was really just removing contracts for the sake of getting DeRozan on the team. Not to mention Nikola Vucevic makes 24 and then 22 million over the next 2 years, and DeMar DeRozan makes 28, which is a little steep, but not for what he is, but it's not a lot either. So it's not like they invested a crazy amount of money. It's $60 million between these 2 players per year for 2 and then 1 year where it's just DeRozan. That's not a lot. It's not like they're all in. It's not like they're assetless. They still have all of their young players, really. They still have Kobe White and Patrick Williams that they could move if they want to. They still could do a sign and trade with Larry Markkanen. So I don't think they went all in on those guys. Zach could leave in 1 year. While that is true, and comments from a player in terms of saying they want to stay with a team, I take those with a complete grain of salt, and I'm not going to use those in the case of my team. I think when people say, oh, this player has said he wants to stay in this city, how many times have we seen them then leave that city? I think when fans hold on to things like that, generally speaking, it's a bad idea, unless those players end up backing that up time and time again, let's say Bradley Beal with the Wizards. So that's I'm not going to use that to argue against it. All I will say is, from what it seems that Zach wants to see commitment from the Bulls, and it seems like he wants to be the guy on a good team. And the Bulls have done pretty much everything to cater to what Zach wants. He has been active in the decisions the Bulls front office has been making. And if that's truly a goal of Zach LaVine, then I don't think there's many other franchises in the league that are going to provide that to him. So Zach, I don't think is going to be leaving. I think he'll be signing a contract extension, presuming that these guys are not right about the Bulls not being good next year. Could finish 11th to 12th easily. You understand the Bulls were 11th or 12th last year, right? And then they added 2 really good players on top of that. And in the process, sure, they lost first-round picks. Another thing he said is they can't trade a draft pick until 2040, which is obviously an exaggeration. But, like, in terms of in the moment now, they just added 2 really good players. Lonzo is a good starting point guard who fits what the Bulls need flawlessly. DeMar DeRozan is a borderline all-star caliber player who they, by the way, got for less than a max contract, which with how the NBA is these days, even though DeRozan wasn't going to get one, that's still something. So for you to suggest that getting a borderline all-star and a really good starter, and in the process, in terms of player capital, only losing Thaddeus Young, what the fuck do you mean they're going to finish the same place as last year? Are you out of your fucking mind? It's not as though a bunch of teams that were below the Bulls got better and that's going to knock their spot down. If anything, a few teams above them have gotten worse. And then the terrible defense thing is what gets me, because this is an indicator to me that you don't know what you're talking about with the Chicago Bulls. Because if you look on paper, the Chicago Bulls are not a good defensive team from a personnel standpoint. However, they were good defensively last year, even when it was that case. Last year when Vucevic played, which was, I believe, over 20 games. Let me pull that up. It was 26 games. The Bulls had a top 10 defensive rating, or it was somewhere in that ballpark. I'm not going to bother going through to find the specifics of it, but the Bulls, when they had Wendell Carter, previous in that season, had a top, I think it was 12 defense, and with Vucevic, it actually got better. Now, I don't think that will hold up. I don't think Vucevic is a better defender than Wendell Carter, and they lost Thaddeus Young, who was a big part of their defense, so credit to it, but at the same time, they also brought in Lonzo Ball, who is maybe the best guard perimeter defender in the game. He's at least in the conversation. And then they brought in Alex Caruso, who's a fantastic borderline all-defensive candidate. And they lost Thaddeus Young, who's really good. But their guard defense and perimeter defense definitely drastically improved, and that's been one of the Bulls' weakest points. Patrick Williams is already a really good defender with potential to take a leap towards being great. And Vucevic is a drop big, which means there's ways to take advantage of that. But at the same time, if you have good perimeter defense, you can mitigate that. And the point is, the Bulls last year with Vucevic were not a bad defensive team. And that's not going to change by adding more defensive talent than you previously had. Like DeMar DeRozan comes in and he's a neutral defensive player. He's the small forward of this team. Neutral defender. Before it was Otto Porter, who was positive, but at the same time he barely fucking played. And if it wasn't him, it was like Denzel Valentine or Garrett Temple. So big fucking whoop. Like defensively, that's not really a downgrade. DeMar DeRozan is a mediocre defensive player. That's fine. Zach LaVine is a good on-ball but terrible off-ball defender. Lonzo is a fantastic defender. Alex Caruso off the bench, fantastic defender. Patrick Williams, a really good defender. And Vucevic is a good defender, or a passable defender. But the Bulls' defensive scheme last year actually made the Bulls a respectable defense. Good schemes can surpass bad personnel, and I wouldn't even say the Bulls' personnel is bad. So if I had to guess, I'd say the Bulls are a middle-of-the-pack to, at max, like the 20th defense in the league, which obviously is not good. But I'm pretty confident that a team that was 11th overall in defensive rating last year is not going to plummet to one of the worst defensive teams in the league by adding 2 good defensive players and 1 neutral one. That's stupid. That's just, it shows that you know nothing about the Chicago Bulls, which, hey, I don't blame you for not watching the Bulls, but if you're going to comment on them, watch the Bulls, because the team is not bad defensively. Their biggest issue, ironically, has been offense, because anytime the Bulls tried to do anything that wasn't Zach LaVine, it was kind of a fucking nightmare. That's the whole reason why they got Vucevic, because they wanted some guys capable of offense outside of just Zach LaVine, and then whenever Kobe White decides he's going to have a good game. So that's dumb. And then finally at the end, he brings up Jimmy Butler. That's just completely irrelevant. This is a different front office, so critiquing Karnisovas and Zach, I think it's Zach Eversley, or no, it's Mark Eversley, to criticize them for what John Paxson and Gar Forman did in the past is like, that's not connected in the slightest. Like, you're talking about ownership, but ownership doesn't have much influence on that. They haven't really, the problem with ownership, if anything, in the past is that they haven't had as much influence as they should, and they allowed mediocrity to continue for 20 fucking years. But absolutely not to the notion that the Jimmy Butler trade has anything to do with what they're doing now. That's in the past. What the Bulls are now and what they were then is just completely different from a fundamental standpoint, and it's irrelevant. I also find it funny that the other guy says that Nick Friedel hit it on the head, but then he later goes on to just say something like, say stuff that's way worse than what Nick said. Everyone's mad at Nick because Bulls fans hate Nick, but like, it was this fucking guy that was dumb. And then the other guy, as he goes, the third guy on the panel, as he goes to start talking, the video cuts him off. So I don't even really know what the fuck he said. He started to say that he didn't agree that they weren't a play-in team. If you don't think they're a play-in team, you're just wrong. I'm sorry. Unless there's injuries or it really doesn't work, which I'm confident that it will, it's stupid to suggest they wouldn't be a play-in team. Like, do you really think they're not going to move up one spot in the standings by adding 2 really good players, a good backup, and a full season of Vucevic? It's fucking stupid. That's it. Goodbye.